was a solid year for PC gaming, but you want to know what the very best PC games of last year were, don't you? Well, that's where we come in. Every year, all of us here at RPS pick the 24 best games of the year and stuff them inside an advent calendar for you to devour across the month of December. This video highlights half of those games we celebrated at the end of last year. If at the end of this video you find that your fave didn't get a mention, then look at the full list of the 24 best video games of the year on rockpapershotgun.com. It might be on there. If it's not, then tell us all about your favourite in the comments section. Maybe you'll convince others and us to give it a go. As always, our selected games aren't in any particular order, except for that final game on this list, which is accurately and definitively the game of the year. So let's get into it. Here are Rock Paper Shotgun's PC Games of the Year for 2020. Paradise Killer is a deliciously naughty murder mystery wrapped in an infinitely stylish open world game. Bouncing around this island, you'll chat to characters you trust and some you don't, all leading up to this big Phoenix Wright style courtroom drama at the end, where you have to piece together all the evidence you've collected along the way and come up with a conclusion on what happened. Wonderfully, there's no correct path to figuring out some of the game's deeper mysteries. How you get there is just as fun as actually solving it. But those characters, I mean, Dr. Doomjazz. It's the kind of name that just works in Paradise Killer's blood and sun-soaked seaside resort gone wrong. And the same can be said for the rest of the cast. The hot lady with the goat's head that trades gossip for crystals, the bartending red skeleton, the young man possessed by demons. It's all wrong, but it's oh so right. And that music, oh, mwah. Yakuza Like a Dragon manages to capture the chaotic street brawls of past entries as strategic and snappy turn-based fights. Being able to deal extra damage by quickly jumping on a downed enemy or watching out for that small window to block a baddie's attack means that there aren't large sections of just waiting around during battles. Then, when you're in control of the action, you're given plenty of time to pore over the long list of ludicrous abilities at your party's disposal. And with Yakuza Lad's atypical classes like musician, chef, or breakdancer, discovering what their sweet moves look like in-game is always an absolute joy. And there are some marvellously ridiculous weapons thrown in for good measure, like massive vibrators and ice lollies. How nice. As great as the new combat system is, one of our favourite things about Like a Dragon is new protagonist Ichiban Kasuga. There's a reckless energy to him, in the way he plunges himself into Yokohama's criminal underworld without a second glance, and how he doesn't hesitate to help out those who are simply struggling to get by. The perfect man to begin this new era of Yakuza. Half-Life Alyx applies every lesson from the last few years of VR first-person shooters and then pushes the genre further with Valve's talent for design, writing, and their unrivaled resources. The result is a great VR game that makes good on the promise of the medium, but it's also, and this part is very important, a great Half-Life game. The marriage between Half-Life and VR feels good enough that you'd swear the series was always meant to be played this way. Headcrabs are scarier, striders are more imposing, and even the physics-based puzzles are better than they've been before. If Half-Life Alyx wasn't a VR game, there's a case to be made that it would be the most talked about and influential game of the year. Except it wouldn't, because if it wasn't a VR game, it wouldn't be anything at all. It'd be like a 2D version of Mario 64. Anyway, after years of waiting, we actually got a new Half-Life game in 2020, and it's phenomenal. If you were to boil Death Stranding down to its simplest form, then yes, it is a game about moving boxes from point A to point B. But what an act of moving it is. From the way you load your cargo to the route you pick through its rocky mountainous landscape, this is a game where even the tiniest change in gradient can send you tumbling to your knees, destroying your precious deliveries in the process. It's a game where the weather is your enemy and where the sight of a road or a well-placed zipline can bring you to the point of tears. Death Stranding makes you engage with its landscape like no other game. Even the simple act of crossing a river can be fraught with danger. So every journey must be planned and prepared for, balancing the tools you'll need to get the job done against how much cargo you're able to carry. But ultimately, Death Stranding is a game about making connections. The ones you make with NPCs, sure, but more importantly, the ones you make with other players. Its asymmetric online multiplayer elements will see the roads and structures of others occasionally overlap with your own, as you strive to build a world that's worth living in for those that come after you. Prior to 2020, the last time Blaze Fielding dished out Hurt on the Pavement, Marty Pello and pals were topping the charts for 15 long weeks. But when we saw the beautiful hand-drawn art style land at a grand upper and saw vegetarians could transform bin chicken into bin salad, we were all in on Streets of Rage 4. Rather than try and modernise the venerable beat-em-up series with overly long cutscenes or an unnecessary skill tree, the developers just put more emphasis on what the series is known for: the punching and the kicking. The new combo counter and online leaderboard aren't revolutionary, sure, but their inclusion means there's more reason to dive back in after you've enjoyed the campaign's afternoon of entertainment. And every playable brawler offers something different in combat too. My personal favourite is Adam, because his special ability sees his feet turn into dragons, and I think that's pretty impressive. The soundtrack isn't half bad either. It's richer, yet still familiar, like something you're convinced is already on your Spotify playlist. This game didn't need to reinvent the fist-shaped wheel. It just needed a little oil to grease up those knuckles. In 2020, Gears of War was lifted from the chugging exoskeleton of a shooter and fitted into the altogether sleeker carapace of a turn-based strategy game. The result wasn't a massive deviation from what's understood to be the set formula for the series, but where it did differentiate itself, it excelled. Gears Tactics is fast-paced, compulsive, and utterly stripped down to the business of fight, fight, fight. It somehow manages to inject adrenaline and bloodlust into a format where the enemy only moves when you permit them to by pressing a button to say that you're ready. The game does a cracking job of making you feel perpetually on the edge of being completely f***ed, while rarely dragging you all the way through the fire into defeat. Success always feels earned and never assured. It also makes some smart decisions about how to pour Gears setting into the squad 'em up mold, from the overwhelming hordes of brick-faced bastards you're up against to the risk-rewarding thrill of chainsaw charges. Big men but tiny is good. In Spiritfarer, you travel around this world, meeting characters and then helping them fulfill their last wishes before ferrying them to the great beyond. Yeah, this game made us cry a lot. Spiritfarer teaches you to do everything for kindness. It's a management game where you grow plants and work and cook and build, but you don't do it for yourself. You don't smelt iron so you can cut a deal with some building contractor. You don't turn logs into plants to build a bigger, better house for yourself. You do it to build nice homes for your new pals, even though they won't actually be staying with you for that long. And you won't mind. You'll spend ages experimenting with different ingredients in the kitchen, trying to find out what everyone's favourite foods are. You'll collect rare minerals and pound them into dust and turn them into sheets of crystal, just so you can make nice ornaments for your buddies. And your reward is that they're happy. You are kind to them and they are kind to you. And sometimes that's enough. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a bit of a greatest hits. It takes all the best bits previously seen in the series. You've got a big world to play around in. The more hands-off approach from Ubisoft means you can be pretty adventurous. And the protagonist is a big muscly lady. But now that big muscly lady is also a Viking that cares about things like having a lovely haircut, getting tattoos, and building a new settlement in ancient Britain. Having recently moved over to England from Norway, said Viking protagonist Eivor is having a grand old time cementing their power in England. Sometimes the amount of stuff you can do feels a bit overwhelming. There are lords to form political alliances with, abbeys to raid, animals to hunt. There's even a whole separate Vision Quest section where you can explore Asgard whenever you feel like it. But Ubi have struck a great balance between the stealthy assassins of old and the meaty axe-whacking combat of a Viking warrior. And they've stuffed the beautiful, if muddy, world of ancient England with some lovely surprises. There may be a lot going on, but it does mean there's probably something for everyone to love here. For many of us at Rock Paper Shotgun, dropping into Verdansk and shooting some people in the face has been cathartic. With us all instructed to stay indoors for most of last year, hopping online and firing some bullets at other players was as important as anything in 2020. Frankly, it gave us an excuse to chat. It might seem silly to attach such emotional weight to this game that lets you buy weed guns and anime trucks, but Warzone was important to a large section of the RPS treehouse. It was a constant in a year full of scary variables. And all this at no extra cost. It's ridiculous that something as accomplished and polished as this is free to play. Because while it gave us somewhere to catch up, we're pretty sure we would have found another game to house our conversations if this one wasn't up to snuff. We can say with full confidence that Call of Duty Warzone is the best way to keep up with friends. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 is better than it has any right to be. Revisiting these shinier versions of Hangar and School 2 while Zach De La Rocha's instantly recognisable voice bellows from the speakers was already enough to transport us back to our childhoods, but Vicarious Vision's decision to include reverting and wall planting, both of which didn't come into the series until later, was inspired. That, on top of being able to manual your way around stages from the original Pro Skater, allows you to find new combos that simply weren't possible before. You're able to push up against the true limits of these levels you thought you knew inside out. With that said, this isn't just a game for those looking to recapture old glory. Pro Skater 1 and 2 nails something that's special to skating as a subculture. It's wonderfully inclusive. This sense of togetherness is clear to see from the moment you boot up the game. As well as the more experienced and wrinkled original roster, you have a new selection of skaters that's incredibly diverse. Everyone is welcome here. Just bring a board and a willingness to fall over. There are no interesting consequences for mucking up the stealthy approach. Crafting or buying guns feels pointless when you'll probably find a comparable piece on a corpse 5 minutes later. And playing dress up amounts to fitting your V with a jacket that has bigger armor rating than the other jacket. But even when you take all that into consideration, plenty in the RPS treehouse have dumped tons of hours into Cyberpunk 2077. A lot of that is down to the fact that Night City is one of the best open worlds we've ever explored. Sure, it falls apart if you look at it too closely, but still, have a gander at this. It's so big, so garish. Everyone is, yes, at times buggy as but also so weird and colourful. On the topic of Night City's residents, the ones we had conversations with will live long in the memory. Granted, some of the dialogue is as cringy as anything, but we still wanted to spend more time with these characters even after their stories had ended. They aren't deliverers of exposition or terrible assholes like we see in other open world games. They're actually unusually human. We spent the majority of December last year complaining about all of Cyberpunk 2077's faults to each other. But most conversations ended with one saying to the other, "It's good though, isn't it?" Among many things, Hades deserves recognition for captivating us with an engrossing story told within a roguelite that has permadeath and meta progression. You don't get those every day. Supergiant Games have always done incredible work, marrying mechanics with narrative in a way that elevates both. But Zagreus' journey, which evolves run by run, is their magnum opus. With that said, the super Moorish combat kept us coming back just as much. There's always time for one more go here, because of the variety on offer. Completed a run using the shield and boons you got from Artemis and Poseidon? Well, why not see if you can do it all over again using the spear and some powers that Zeus and Ares have in their back pocket. Whatever you're packing, Hades makes you feel powerful. Eventually, you'll be dashing, slicing and shooting everything that moves, with abilities that play off each other wonderfully. Actually, I think it might be time for another Underworld escape attempt, so let's wrap this up. Their back catalogue is already super strong, with games like Bastion, Transistor and Pyre, but Hades is definitely Supergiant Games' finest work. And that's why it's Rock Paper Shotgun's 2020 Game of the Year. Another year, another list of great PC games. But if you haven't seen your favourite pop up, then make sure you check out the full list of our PC games of the year for 2020 on rockpapershotgun.com. You might find that your favourite actually did make the cut. If it didn't, then why not leave a comment championing the 2020 game you love more than any other? We love to celebrate great games, so we'd be more than happy to hear about the video game from last year that you hold dear. Thanks very much for watching, you absolute star, and once again, congratulations Supergiant Games on Hades, the Game of the Year 2020. Dear viewer, do remember, for all of your PC gaming needs, keep it on rockpapershotgun.com.